There's one issue you've been raising constantly for the past few years, which is the border issue with China. You've raised that in Parliament several times. You've sought a discussion on it in Parliament several times. The government has said that it's a sensitive issue, so they've not agreed for a discussion. Do you think that the country needs more transparency when it comes to strategic issues like this than what exists right now?
It's extremely sad and it's unfortunate that critical issues of national import are not discussed in Parliament. I don't recall the last time when Parliament actually had a discussion on the demands for grants of either the Ministry of Defence or the Ministry of External Affairs, or for that matter, even the Ministry of Home. There may have been an odd instance here or there, but ministries which are critical to the functioning of the Indian state are not subject to parliamentary scrutiny. And I don't understand this diffidence of not discussing the standoff with China on the line of actual control, which has now been running for the last 50 months altogether, because Indian Parliament had a convention that even when we were fighting the border war with China in 1962, concurrently for almost a week from the 7th of November 1962 till 16th of November 1962, both houses of Parliament extensively discussed the situation on the border. Even when the fighting was raging, the ceasefire only happened on the 20th of November 1962. So therefore, and even after that, during the 1971 war with Bangladesh, the winter session of Parliament was on. And then Prime Minister Mrs. Gandhi kept Parliament fully briefed to the extent that she could, given the operational reasons that we were fighting a war both in the Western and the Eastern Front, about what was really evolving. So this approach of opacity, of trying to pretend that everything is all right, कि सब ठीक है, I don't think it helps the country, because you have a strange situation where even today you have 50 to 60,000 troops who are eyeball to eyeball. And on the other hand, you have a trade relationship with China which seems to be booming, much to India's disadvantage, with the trade deficit actually growing adverse day by day. So therefore, there is a very clear dichotomy and there's a clear disconnect. So there is a need to have a larger discussion on India's overall relationship with China. And as a subset of that, a discussion on what has been going on the line of actual control, as well as a discussion of what is happening in your neighborhood. For example, the developments in Bangladesh have been extremely, cataclysmic, to some extent unfortunate, to put it again very, very diplomatically. But there is a need to discuss, because whatever happens in Bangladesh has a bearing on us both strategically and from a national security point of view. Similarly, with Nepal, going back to the blockade in 2015. Similarly, with Bhutan, and the fact that Bhutan and China have been negotiating with regard to their boundary. What is the impact that it has in India? Sri Lanka, the fact that the Chinese role continues to be omnipresent. Maldives, where you have a very discernible political force which came to power on an India out campaign. So therefore, India's immediate neighborhood, and of course then the larger play of where India really sees itself in the world today, are issues which Parliament needs to discuss. Parliament does not only need to discuss as to which road is being built in a particular constituency, or which well is being dug or not being dug, right? Or whether a particular local or municipal issue has been addressed or not addressed. I think the manner in which the Indian democratic framework has been structured, there was a specific role that has been given to Parliament to really think about, talk about, hold the government to account on the larger issues which have a bearing on the future and the trajectory of this nation.
But do you think India's position in the global order is changing? You just saw Prime Minister going to Kyiv, and there are now calls for intervention in Russia-Ukraine war. So, in this context, do you think that India's position is changing in the global order?
Well, the Prime Minister's choice of destinations has been rather interesting, and he went to Russia as the first destination of his third term as Prime Minister. And then, of course, he's gone to Poland and he's gone to Ukraine, which where he had, if I can say, a rather difficult and an emotional meeting with President Zelensky. But the fact is that the settlement of the Russia-Ukraine question, or Russia's aggression on Ukraine's territorial sovereignty, is going to be a part of an overall settlement about the future or the future security architecture of Europe. You see, if you go back all the way to the Peace of Westphalia in 1648 and then come to the Concert of Europe in 1815, or to the League of Nations after the Second World War, or after the First World War, or then the Second World War, and the settlements which took place at the various conferences in Tehran and Casablanca and onwards, there has always been an overall settlement of the European security question. In 1991, after the fall of the Soviet Union, you've had a hiatus, which Russia possibly has been not comfortable with. So, in my estimation, whenever this particular issue gets resolved, which I hope it gets resolved at the earliest, it will be a part of a larger discussion as to what would be the future framework of the European security architecture. And I don't think it is going to really come out of any individual initiative, howsoever well-intentioned, which any country might take. The classical example is the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. Again, whenever the Palestinian question gets resolved, it is going to be a part of the overall framework of the Middle Eastern security architecture. Something which has not happened since 1948. There have been lots of individual initiatives by many countries. The US did the Camp David Accords, then you had the Oslo process, and you've had various processes after that. If you look, even Afghanistan, there have been various attempts going all the way back to 1979. But it didn't happen because the Afghan question also has to be seen in the context of a broader Central Asian security architecture framework.